Hello and welcome to REDCap Tips and Tricks. This session we are looking at draft preview mode. So draft preview mode is a functionality that allows us to test our drafted changes. It allows us to see the impact of our drafted changes without actually affecting any of the data. So this will let us test branching logic, calculations, action tags, embedding, formatting, all of that. But no data is actually saved as we test in draft preview mode. But we can open forms to see what the impact of our changes are on the saved data. Make sure that we haven't done anything that's going to cause issues. So draft preview mode is used in kind of a specific set of circumstances. It only becomes available when your project is in production. Because the goal is to test changes without altering the existing data. And the assumption in development mode is that this is all test data, you'll delete it later. There's not that effort to preserve the integrity of that data while you're in development mode. The other aspect is that draft preview mode only comes up when you have put the project into draft mode. Because the point of draft preview mode is to apply your currently drafted changes. So if I come into my test project here, I have this project is in production and I have some changes drafted. So let's just go take a quick look at the summary of all my drafted changes just to see what kind of stuff I've been doing. So I've added a field to an existing form right here. I added an option to a multiple choice field. I added some branching logic to this field email. I turned this group of yes/no fields into a matrix, and I added a new form. And I also, there we go. I also added an action tag to my PDF upload field here. So what I want to do now is to test out my changes to make sure that everything is working the way I want it to, and that I'm not causing issues with my existing data. So to do that, what I'm going to do right here in the yellow box where I have the option to submit changes for review, that's where the option to turn on draft preview mode is. So this draft preview mode is only going to apply to me. No one else in the project will be affected by it. The data won't be affected by it. This is just to let me see my changes. And it does give you a description of what you can and can't do when it pops up. So it simulates the data, but no data is actually saved. You can't create new records. You can only preview forms that already exist. So you'll see in a minute that my CAD appreciation index form, which is new, is not available for me to do in draft preview mode. Things like randomization, data resolution workflow, alerts, reports, form display logic, surveys, all of that is not affected by draft preview mode. So it's restricted to just the data entry forms for me to enter data in data entry mode, and only the existing forms on existing records. When we've got draft preview mode switched on, you can see we've got this little reminder up here that that's the mode we're in. And let's go to the record status dashboard and have a look at my changes. So one of the things that I did was I branched my email field on this participant information form to only appear if I have something in the first name field. So if I go and start typing in, you can see here now I get that email address. The other thing that I did on this page, this is the field where I added that action tag. So I can come in. The action tag I used was @inline, which means that a PDF that I upload to this field should be displayed. And you can see here that that action tag is working. So I'm able to see what that looks like. And I'm also able to go, okay, I want to change the field alignment because of that. I'm going to leave without saving my changes. And I'm going to come make a little extra edit, right? I'm going to come change my field alignment. And that is also something that I can do in draft mode. It will take effect as I'm doing draft previews, but it will not permanently change the data. So now I can try again at previewing my PDF. I can enter ephemeral data, but none of this data is truly saved. And I can come in here to my medical history. So on medical history, I just added this smoking status field. So that did not exist previously. So you can see I get a look at that. I added encephalitis as a new option to my cancer complications field. So I'm able to test that. I'm able to see what that looks like. I'm able to test branching logic action tags, make sure they're working the way that. The last set of changes we're going to look at are on this form here. So these fields, anemia, neutropenia, vomiting, allergic reaction, those were originally separated yes/no fields. and I converted them to a matrix. So now I get to see what that matrix looks like, make sure that everything makes sense, that all my options make sense for this. So the other piece of branching logic that I created is here on my steady exit form, the question about whether or not this person went into remission. I went ahead and branched that based on a value from the medical history form. So it's branched to only appear if I have a date of their original cancer diagnosis. I don't see that field popping up. So let's go to the medical history form, and then let's stick a diagnosis date in there. And so you can see, because we're not actually saving any data, my branching logic also is limited to branching logic within a form. So when I'm branching based on the contents of another form in another event, because that data is not being saved, I'm just able to test the forms as is. The branching logic that goes across forms isn't going to be testable in this method either. And then after I've gotten to test, when I go to submit my changes for review, so now the changes take effect across the board. So because this is a longitudinal project, you still don't see my new form yet. So let me just designate that real quick. So now that I'm in production mode again, and my form has actually been created, now I'm able to go in and test my new form. So I can't test a new form in draft preview. But you can see that for record 4, remember that was where I was entering all my test data. There's no data hanging out in here. That data was ephemeral. It was only for that testing moment. It did not get permanently saved. And these are the restrictions on draft preview mode. These are listed in that pop-up that shows up. But as a quick reference, it only applies to the person who's drafting and testing the changes, can't delete or create records, nothing gets saved or overwritten, alerts don't trigger. So it applies only to existing forms, and it doesn't apply to features outside of the data entry forms. And it also doesn't apply in survey mode. So that is draft preview. And again, that lets us see what the impact of our changes is going to be, test our logic, test all of our features, new fields, anything we want to in a live project that's in production without actually overwriting or changing any of our data.